I'm Nigel Bruin from Huawei. What I want to do today is a couple of things. I want to give you some ideas. I want to encourage you, and mostly I want to give you confidence that we can achieve this new digital economy that we keep talking about. And I have a few minutes to do that. My first slide, just to remind ourselves what we're talking about. Because we're developing an economy, an industry, a lifestyle that is now based on the internet, IP technologies, and all the things that we're building on top of it. It's what we're calling kind of the fourth age. And so if everything is built on that, then infrastructure is then the first thing that we need to do. And so in Africa, infrastructure is still one of the main agenda points. So that's a lot of the conversation here today and over the next 2 days. But I want us to remind ourselves where we're going. Infrastructure is just the first stage of the process. So what do we need? Ideally then, in our national broadband networks, we want it ultra fast. And it's very good to hear that the targets are rising every year, but we need to be extremely bold on speed. Always we need more speed. Ubiquitous, we need to include everyone. This should not be just for towns. It should not just be for rich people. We need to find a way to bring these benefits to everyone. And it has to be affordable, which is everybody has to join into this new digital economy. And it's going to be centered around people, services, lifestyle. That's the world that we're building now. Okay. Maybe we are half finished with the internet, maybe. We have at least 1 billion more households to connect. A long way to go. Maybe we've done about half the ones that we need to do. We've got a long way to go. And so these kind of events, it's how to continue that process of connecting everyone. So it's 1 billion households. There's a lot of broadband plans. There's a lot of energy, a lot of attention on this kind of thing. Everybody's saying the right things. What I hope these kind of events in the next 2 days is how we're going to achieve them. We need to turn the rhetoric into action. And I'm going to give you some ideas today. So we say that ultra-fast broadband is a basic need. Ultra-fast, I'm saying around about 100 megabits or more would be ideal. And I like Tony's comment about Netflix. That sets this up perfectly. Because a lot of what I've just said is we need to connect everyone. Connectivity is the first thing. And secondly, once we have a few megabits, then we realize that, wow, some things don't work very well. We need to get into this ultra-fast era so that we can get away from wondering about whether services will work and whether it's worth subscribing to Netflix. Will it be usable? Into experience-based services where we can sell the experiences that touch our lifestyles and our business. So that's why the reason why people keep raising the targets. They keep setting ever more, 30 megabits, 100 megabits. Next year we're going to be more. It's because we need to get out of this connected, bandwidth-limited mindset and move forward as bold as we can. And this is what people are doing around the world. They're setting very bold targets. So if you look at the leading economies, it's a race. Who can get there first? And this is very important. This has become a national strategic race. We talk about cyber war, but we're certainly in a race. Who can exploit these technologies faster than the next country? And Africa certainly has a big opportunity here. You've got so many resources and people and talent. How can we energize that with these kind of digital technologies? So we need to set the right targets. That's certainly a big part of this. Cities, I like this map. So I'm English, so if you look at the top there, the big circle represents the GDP of United Kingdom. The circle within it is London alone. London is nearly half of all of the GDP of the United Kingdom. Cities drive economies forward. They are a huge part of the economy. So by 2050, about 6 billion people will live in cities. So we're becoming a very urbanized world. Kenya, for example, it's a lot less at the moment, only about 40% urbanized. But it's at 3.6% per year growth, it's twice the global average. So this is why we need specific policies for cities. You hear smart cities a lot. And you might wonder, why is that a subset? Where does that sit in the whole scheme of things? We do need specific urban policies to solve those particular problems. We need cities to operate well, to drive the economy, to be nice places to live, to solve the problems of congestion, pollution, traffic, and all those things. So we need specific city policies as well. So Africa's doing well. There's a lot of plans. There's a lot of projects been started. Some money's been spent. China, which is my benefactor, is a big investor in China, in Africa, which is very good to see. What we need to what I'm going to say a couple of times today is we need to work together to achieve this, to turn these plans into reality. And it's going to be a joint effort. So I'm standing up here, I was invited to give an industry perspective, but actually I want to turn it into a collaborative effort. I'm going to say industry is a part of that. We will play our part, but actually both business, the technology, and the policymakers are all going to have to come together to solve these problems. So to turn these plans into reality, it's going to be a joint effort. And that joint effort. I hope these kind of events over the next couple of days, you can network and you start making connections to start delivering on these promises. So the good news is, here's the technology slide. We can deliver up to 1 gigabit or more on just about any medium you give us. You give me a copper wire, a fiber optic cable, a coax cable, we can get up to 1 gigabit down it. So in a sense, technology finished. We can do that. So why do we not have it deployed? Well, because it costs money. And the deployment costs are a big part of that, digging the roads, laying all the infrastructure and so on. So the question then is, what technologies are we going to choose? And it will be a technology mix. That's the other big point. And then how can we reduce those engineering and deployment costs to make this a reality? How can we bring this, solve all of those problems, work together to reduce those costs? And that's a big part of what I say, it takes a collaborative effort. And this is one of my key messages today, that there are lots of resources in countries that are not being used to solve this problem. So there's poles, there's rights of way, there are ducts in the ground, there's fiber that's been deployed, maybe as a private network, the utility companies, the government, lots of people are deploying systems that we can use collectively to build national broadband networks. And this is the biggest single thing that I think is being missed by a lot of people. Failure to exploit the resources that we already have. And partly it's policy, partly it's because it's sometimes a little bit difficult, right? Because utility companies, that may not be in their mind, how they can be part of, say, a national infrastructure in that way. But this is a crucial point. And the people who are getting this right are making the progress. So tower sharing, duct sharing, pole sharing, all of these things, bring them all in. So if I'll give you a couple more examples in a moment. We still have a problem with the rural areas. As you get further away from towns, it gets more and more expensive to deploy. We know this. There's a few ideas. You know, we can. There's ways in which we can make the technology cheaper. But it's undeniable that comes a point where fiber, which is the best technology, definitely we want fiber to the home if possible for everyone. That's the first choice. It becomes increasingly expensive to the point where it can no longer be afforded. And in the graph at the top right, you can see that at some point, wireless technologies become the cheapest. And that, I think, is going to be one of the big messages of the next couple of days. You'll hear a lot of fiber, but you'll hear a lot of 4G talk. So I'm on the panel a little bit later talking about 4G, because that's going to be a big piece of the solution in Africa and Kenya in particular. So wireless is a complement to fixed. You should try to deploy fixed, but wireless is going to be a big piece of it, particularly 4G. 4G now, we have a technology that will we can already reach gigabit speeds with 4G, 4.5G. That's easy to do. We've got carrier aggregation. We have all of those pieces in place. We can deploy, we can use the wireless network to give gigabit speeds to homes. So we have the technical solutions. So these are we need to get that mix. We need to get the right incentives, both for the companies and everybody else, to deploy these kind of systems. So this is a nice looking graph. So you start with dense, urban, fiber, fixed, and at some point as you move out into the regions, either it's very remote or mountainous or whatever, you move on to wireless. And where that line is depends on your country, depends on the economics and so on. Depends how much spectrum you have, depends on the strength of the mobile operators, depends on a number of things. But that's the general solution. It'll be fixed and fiber where you can, leading to 4G into the rural areas. So we've been doing national broadband plans for many years. I've been advocating it for, over 10 years, fiber plans. And so there are a number of countries that have already finished. I live in Singapore, which is very nice. National Broadband Plan is finished. They're on to the next plan. The next plan is Smart City, Smart Nation. We've already moved on. So we know the things that work. We know how to do this. And this is, again, I'll repeat, we need the right policies. The single biggest determinant for the success of a national broadband network, in my opinion, is clear top-down leadership from government. If you don't have that, it's very difficult to make any progress because the commercial companies can only go so far. There comes a point where their shareholders say, well, that's not the right thing to do. You need to stop. Because we want that ubiquitous and fast, that's where the government needs to step in. It needs to create the policy environment, the market environment, where commercial companies, ideally, can finish the job and get everybody connected. And I do, in the end, think that national broadband networks should be commercial, not run by governments, by the way. I think government should govern and set policy. I think companies are much better at running networks. Open access, I think, is a very powerful tool for driving competition, and competition drives humans forward, so that's always very good. You can have competition in different levels. It can be bitstream, it can be exclusive access to a particular area or a technology or a spectrum. There's lots of ways in which to manipulate the policies and the regulation to create open access that works, that is positive and moves things forward. State subsidy, in the end, the government has to put in some money. That is true. They have to put some money somewhere. Where they put the money is the question. So I don't think they should generally buy networks. They should find the part of the networks of the system that is not working. So fill in the gaps. Usually it's rural. Sometimes it's the metro. Sometimes it's the open access. Maybe it's the wireless in the rural areas. Find the areas where the subsidy will have the right point of impact, together with the policies, so that you get the value out of it. And we know from places like New Zealand and Malaysia and so on, we know the checks and balances so that government money is not squandered, that it is directly related to outcomes and benefits. So again, we know how to do this. Cost reduction and demand stimulus. The government should be a big user of telecoms. They should be a primary anchor for these national broadband networks, and they should be encouraging companies to train and adopt these technologies to stay competitive. So there's three examples. The left-hand one is Croatia. And Croatia noticed that they didn't have a national fiber network, but many other people did, like the water company, the electricity company, and some private companies had deployed all of these large-scale fiber networks for their own purposes, and much of the network was empty. There was dark fiber. And so they created a consortium where they brought all of these privately held assets together into a holding company and then used them to create a national wholesale network. Unused assets just sitting there in the ground. All it needed was someone with vision to do the work to bring them to activity. China in the middle, they simply set the policy, if you build a new house or you renovate a house, it must have fiber access, and the developer must pay. Simple as that. It must have fiber access. Because as we know, with fiber, the closer you get to the front door, the more expensive it gets. So it solves that problem. The right-hand one is Poland. They're putting money into municipalities. They're working at that level, very much kind of like the Swedish model, where the local government can actually be very active and solve the problem at that level. It doesn't always have to be central government to do this. So 3 ideas of how regulation can bring assets to bear and can make the right incentives moving forward. So this is my second to last slide. And the point in the middle is the main one. The people who understand where we're going with this, Japan, Korea, Singapore, somewhat Australia, and so on, they understand that middle point, that the economy is going to be the internet plus the vertical. The internet is not the end goal here. The end goal is the vertical: health, education, industry, whatever. That's the end goal. And with that in mind, therefore, you need the policies that bring those two together, that the infrastructure is created and you create and incentivize the industries to take it up. So take up is a key point. And that was mentioned here today. We have quite a lot of assets on the ground. We have 4G networks. But take-up could be better. Well, I think government is a big part of that, because I think they have so many, they affect industries and companies in so many different ways. I think they can be a big part of that stimulus. So if you're good at that, if you achieve that, that kind of internet plus vertical, you can get the right-hand side. You can get the GDP, the productivity, the employment, this state index, which is a measure of how well a country is using its ICT assets. You can raise your state index and gain an advantage both for yourself, both for your region and Africa and within the world. So this is my final slide. And this really, to me, is everything that I want to say today and everything that conferences like this are all about. Because to achieve this, it's three things going to have to come together. The technology, the policies, and the business people. And we have representatives of all of those here today. And you're thinking about what I've said about how to move forward. Synergy, using the assets in the ground, let's use mixed technologies, find the right policies to stimulate. So I heard some very good things about open data, that's very good, increasing speeds, that's fine, but we have a lot more to go, and I think there's a lot more assets can be brought to bear to bring benefits to everyone. So if you can solve that problem, if you can get synergies and you can build that virtuous circle, that's the way we're going to move forward and build a vibrant national broadband network in whatever country you're in. This is a general model. I think in Africa, it's clearly going to be fiber and wireless, 4G, and it's all about building that digital economy, because I think that benefits everyone. So I'm conscious of time. I'll stop there and I wonder if you have any more questions. Tony?
Thank you, Nigel.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anyone have any questions?
I'll move it to the next slide, because in terms of sending emails to people, snarky or not, that's my email address.
Can I just follow on also, maybe on the government side? Governments, especially in this part of the world, have huge pressure on their budgets. If you'd been here 2 weeks ago and seen the havoc that the rain caused, then you know that there's areas and lots of people pushing for investment. How do you convince the government to prioritize the investment in this particular area?
Okay, so it's very difficult to argue that you need Angry Birds over a hospital. Right? That's not an equivalence that makes sense. But we have to think about this global economy. It's the basis of everything else we want to build. So just like roads and railways and electricity, there's not an argument. Everybody believes you should be able to, these basic pieces of infrastructure. So internet is this basic structure that we all need to build. So it's a long-term bet, for sure, but it accelerates. The earlier you start, the earlier you put your foot on the accelerator of the internet, the more benefit that you're going to get. That's what all the China, the Singapore, the Koreas, they've all seen this. They've all seen that we need to get ahead. We need to be first with 1 gigabit, 10 gigabit. We were first with all of these things. And the other thing I would say is give people the tools. And my experience of Africa is tremendous entrepreneurship and innovation. Give them that basis, and they will surprise you. So I can't make the money appear, but I'm sure based on that big view, appropriate funds should be made, but also make use of what we already have. They may be relatively cheap to bring in resources we already have. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Nigel, thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much indeed.